This is not a small watch by any means, and it is not meant to be, and yet it wears surprisingly well. There are a few tricks that Spinnaker employed here to make it happen. Some are somewhat obvious, or at least easy recognizable by savvy watch enthusiasts, like, for example, a compact lug-to-lug distance combined with inverted end links. However, some are not so obvious, and we will get to them in this review. But there are so much more to this adventure timepiece than just wearability. Things like cool original design, very tasteful choice of color combinations, and of course the functionality that Spinnaker managed to pack into this GMT compressor style watch. However, the million-dollar question is, how really good is it, and is it worthy of your attention? Well, we've got it here. Let's find out. Hello and welcome back! Taking a break from homages, today we have a really interesting macro brand on the channel. Just in case you're not familiar, Spinnaker is a well-established macro brand that produces some seriously cool watches. Their innovative and original designs are inspired by the spirit of adventure, diving and exploration, which all sounds pretty cool. Today we have one of their latest models, in addition to one of their popular collections, the Bradner. The Bradner collection has actually been around for quite a few years, and Spinnaker continues to add a new and interesting designs and colorways as this collection evolves. Following the introduction of the Seiko NH34 GMT movement, Spinnaker naturally added models with GMT complications, and now we have this GMT compressor style watch here. Now, for full transparency, Spinnaker did reach out to me and ask if I would be interested in reviewing one of their new models. The offer, which after seeing the renders of these new watches, I just couldn't refuse. I also get to keep it. And in return, as usual, I agreed to share my comprehensive review of this timepiece and to point you to the website and product listings. And so, all the necessary links, of course, will be in the description of this video. Now, I will talk about the price a bit later in this review. However, at the time of recording this video, Spinnaker is running a 25% discount campaign pretty much on all the items in their store. However, just in case you miss it, I will also include a 20% discount code that was issued specifically for the channel in the description of this video. Okay, it is a bit less than 25, but still a very good savings. Okay, let's first briefly look at the collection of the colorways on offer. As you can see, we are spoiled for choice. I was lucky to be able to choose among this new set of colorways, and it wasn't an easy task. All of them look really interesting, but I finally settled on this Blue Alps model, and it looked even better than in the pictures when it arrived. Also, before we get a closer look at this watch, I must note the presentation of the packaging. It is done really well, providing plenty of protection for transporting and at the same time looking good too. And by the way, there are no exotic materials here like wood or metal, which is good because we actually want most of the cost to end up in the watch and not somewhere else. So, in terms of dimensions, this is not a small watch. However, as I pointed out earlier, it wears surprisingly well. There is a little trick that Spinnaker used to achieve that, and it is not just well-sculpted curved-down lugs, by the way. So, we have 42mm diameter, 50.2mm lug-to-lug distance, 20mm lug width, and 15.1mm case height. It does sound a tad on the high side, however, well-slanted downward lugs manage to hide it pretty well. The supplied bracelet and coincidentally the supplied rubber strap will cover wrists up to 8.5 inches or 21.5 centimeters in circumference. And as supplied, this watch weighs 165 grams and 152 grams after adjusting the bracelet to my about 7-inch wrist. And by the way, this is the trick that I was talking about earlier, because 150 grams being kinda a Goldilocks weight for a stainless steel desk diver makes this watch wear somewhat lighter and even creates a perception of it being even smaller than it actually measures. And to push this concept even further, this watch weighs only 100 grams when set on the rubber strap, which is comparatively light. Now, in terms of the movement, Spinnaker used a Seiko NH34 GMT caliber here. Introduced a couple of years ago, this is a very popular Seiko movement, and it is now a workhorse of budget GMT watches across many large brands and, of course, macro brands. Looking at the case, we have full stainless steel construction. The case is brushed all around, with transitions between the facets crisp and well defined. The appearances of case is further enhanced by the different directions of the brushing, like for example, the flanks feature quite unusual vertical brushing, which contrasts well with the horizontal brushing on the fixed bezel. The lugs are sculpted really well, facilitating a smooth visual transition to the bracelet. On the right hand side of the case we have two crowns, which basically give this watch a compressor style look. If you looked into the key concept behind the compressor design, you probably know by now that calling a watch with two crowns a compressor is similar to calling a Formula 1 race car a tractor, only because both have a steering wheel. In reality, the compressor watches are not defined by the number of crowns or their positions, but rather by the specific design of the back case gasket that would increase the case water tightness the more pressure was applied to it. While pretty cool concept, it is not particularly relevant anymore because of the advances in rubber gasket materials, which are now widely used. So, coming back to these two crowns, we can see that we don't get crown guards here, although the crowns are slightly recessed into the sides of the case, which in effect will provide some kind of minimal protection against sideways bumps and knocks. Both crowns have almost identical shape and proportions. However, the crown at focal position is a screw-down crown, and it is crown that we will use to set the time, and it also features an engraved Spinnaker logo, while the crown at 2 o'clock position that operates the inner bezel has a circular arrow engraving, and it is not a screw-down crown, which didn't prevent Spinnaker from declaring 600 feet of water resistance on this watch, which is an equivalent of 180 meters. Turning the case around, and we're facing a prominent screw-on exhibition caseback and a view of Seiko NH34 movement with a decorated rotor. A nice touch. The exhibition window is not made out of sapphire, just in case you were wondering, which would have been nice, but still perfectly fine. The caseback does protrude a bit more than I personally would like to, but luckily the lugs curve down sufficiently to compensate for it and still provide a good wrist fit. And also, this shape seems to go well with the tool diver aesthetics of this watch. Still, I think I might expand on this a bit more when we get to the verdict section of this review. We have a perfectly flat and slightly raised sapphire crystal here with rounded edges. It is very clear and what looks like a good quality crystal. I even have seen some reviews referring to it as a box sapphire. I'm not sure if it is raised enough to qualify as a box sapphire, however, again, it looks really good. And having good anti-reflective properties on this crystal even further enhances the view of this really well-designed dial, which we will look at next. So, dial. Definitely one of the center points on this timepiece. It is really well designed, and judging by the popularity of this Bradner line, this design was very well received by the watch community. This dial design also allows for a very elaborate play with color combinations without jeopardizing the toolish aesthetics of this watch. So you can get a serious tool watch and yet still get a color combo to your individual taste. And Spinnaker takes it even further by offering the tropic rubber straps with the colors matching the color palette of the dial. So working our way from the dial perimeter, we have a bidirectional two-tone inner bezel with 24-hour markers to track the second and the third time zone on this GMT watch. The hour markers are three-dimensional and also loomed. Moving closer towards the center, and we get an applied ring with minute chaptering printed on it. Interesting detail, the first 20 minutes are printed in red color. My guess it is a subtle nod to diving heritage of the brand, although I'm not entirely sure how you would use it unless all your dives start precisely on top of the hour. If you have any ideas what these red minute markers can be used for other than being purely decorative, please do let us know in the comments. Now moving further, we have applied our markers and a really well executed background with gradient dark blue to blue transition towards the center. The writing is also done very tastefully with Spinnaker brand name executed in silver and definitely having a three-dimensional look. I also like the handset design, it is somewhat unusual and also works very well on this dial. And not just the hand's size and shape, but also the color accents which complement and contrasts colors on other components of this dial. And we have a date complication at 3 o'clock position, which is also framed really well. And now the loom. Staying true to its diving adventure heritage, Spinnaker delivered a very potent loom here. The loom application is very consistent, it is bright, and longevity is very good as well. We have this Bits of Rice bracelet. We have here a slight taper from 20mm lugs down to about 18mm by the clasp. The bracelet is very flexible and there are plenty of articulation between the links. However, I need to point out that the links, while looking like 5 small independent parts framed by 2 outer elements, are actually 3-piece links. That is, the 5 mirror polish parts in the middle are actually fused together to make a single component. The end-links here also deserve a special mention. We have here inverted solid end-links, which even further enhance the wrist comfort of this watch. The end-links feature a quick-release mechanism, which is very useful. The bracelet links are connected by pins, which I think is fine, and we have a pressed double pusher clasp here with a milled inner scissor mechanism. The clasp also features a diver's extension, which provides about 14.5mm of extra length. The clasp is signed and it also has 3 points of macro adjustments. And we also need to take a look at the supplied Tropic rubber strap. The rubber strap also has a quick release mechanism, which is great, allowing us to swap it in seconds. We have a well-sculpted signed stainless steel buckle, and the rubber strap, of course, is nicely color matched to the dial. Okay, before we get to the price, I should point out that Spinnaker quite often runs sale campaigns that will allow to shave off about 20 or even 25% of the price. As a matter of fact, at the time of making this video, as I mentioned earlier, there is a 25% discount available on this site. However, if for some reason it is not available, I will also include a 20% discount code in the description of this video. So now looking at the actual price, well, I wouldn't actually classify it as exactly a budget offering. We have £472 or $490 for US customers for this GMT version. Now taking 20% off that price should definitely help by bringing the price down to about £380 or $392 respectively. Okay, I've been praising this compressor style GMT most of the review, but what are the things that are not on my favorite list for this watch? Well, as much as I'm impressed by this timepiece, there are a couple of areas that I believe could be addressed in the future releases. First, the thickness of this case. I understand that Seiko NH34 movement does need a bit more space than a normal 3-hander movement, and we have a slightly raised sapphire crystal here, but still, I think this desk diver could shed maybe a half or maybe a whole millimeter of its waistline. However, having said that, judging by the popularity of this watch, it is not much of a deterrent for the Spinnaker customers. And the second point that I believe could do with some improvement is the clasp, especially taking into account that we're seeing more and more fully milled clasps with on-the-fly adjustments on watches in the same or even lower price category. Not a deal breaker in my opinion, especially taking into account the overall very attractive and extremely well executed design of this watch, but something to keep in mind. Other than that, I think it is an absolute cracker of a watch, which will most likely be sticking around in my collection, at least for a time being. What are your thoughts? Well, do share with us in the comments, and for more cool watches, check out my playlist on the screen. I'll put it over here. Don't forget to like if you find this review helpful, and of course subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you in the next video.